right back. Just for instruction that I'm leaving.
Is that okay?
I just told
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Take
How
your
are you
time.
folks doing today?
How are you?
Your little QR code there, sir.
So does everybody have one of these nice little map books?
Your taco or bones. Anyways, so the Kumeyaay is the native indigenous people here. They, according to science, they've been around 12 to 20,000 years, and they still have descendants here today. You know, in 1542, Juan Cabrillo sailed into San Diego and claimed it for Spain. And in 1769, Spain finally sent the missionaries and the military to start with settlements here in California. So they didn't lose it to some country like Russia. So, yeah, could you imagine speaking Russian? Anyway. On our right coming up is the Machado Stewart adobe house. It was built in the 1830s, and Mr. Machado's family lived there continuously until 1966, when the state of California purchased it, refurbished it, and made it part of the park. Now, if you look to your right up on the hill there, you'll see a flagpole above the trees. That's where the Presidio and the mission were originally. Now, the mission moved within a year or so after it was up there because they felt that it wasn't a good place for helping the natives, the indigenous people, and the military. It didn't work so well. So they moved in about 5 miles. Now, there are 21 missions altogether in California, and each of them were started by Father Agapero Serra. And they're all about 30 miles apart or a day's travel, and they were connected by a road called El Camino Real. I smell popcorn.
Fritos.
Fritos. Oh, well, it's that corn smell. It smells corny. Now, on older maps of San Diego, you would see that this had a river coming through here. It was the San Diego River, and they diverted it in about 1890, about a mile north of here. About a mile north of here, it goes directly out to the Pacific Ocean. And then this became a prime real estate for businesses and military. Now, one of the first big businesses that moved here came about 1934, and it was owned by Reuben H. Lee. And Reuben H. Lee owned a company called Consolidated Aircraft. And he moved in here from Buffalo, New York, because he was having a hard time getting his seaplanes to test fly during the winter. The winters are too cold. So he built the factory over here on our left, and from 1935 to the beginning of World War II, he produced his seaplanes, and then at the beginning of World War II, he retooled his factory and started producing the B-24 Liberator bomber. And they produced 6,000 of them during the course of the war here, and another 12,000 were produced in a couple other places in the United States, so there was a grand total of 18,000 of them built. It was the most produced plane during World War II. Now the Navy has it for their naval NAVWAR. They're dealing with information and cyber and logistics for the military. first person who could do a solo flight between New York and Paris or Paris to New York. He didn't care which way, just that it got done. Well, between 1919 and 1927, there hadn't been a successful one, so Lindbergh felt that he stood a good chance still of doing it. And so he was here in San Diego looking for a plane that had already been manufactured, and everybody thought it was a fool's mission to try and do a solo flight. So they weren't too thrilled about letting him use their plane. So he set about to raise money to build one. And he ended up going to St. Louis, and some gentlemen there were willing to give him the money. And they just asked one thing in return, that he would name it after St. Louis. Hence the name Spirit of St. Louis. Now, he came back here to San Diego to a company named Ryan Aircraft. And Ryan Aircraft built his plane in 60 days. Now, it had a few unique features about it. The first one was that it had 5 gas tanks on board, one of which was right where the windshield should go. Unusual feature number 2, they installed a periscope in that plane so he could fly. And that flight took not just 8 hours, it took 33 hours and 33 minutes from New York to Paris back in those days. No wonder why you needed 5 gas tanks. Now that's a day and a quarter of another one, you know. Now Ryan Aircraft used to be across the street there where Solar Turbines is. But good old Lindbergh made it. Now, a year anniversary of that flight, San Diego renamed the airport over here to Lindbergh Field. And it stayed that way until about the late 1980s. And then they changed it over to San Diego International Airport. It's the busiest one-runway airport in the country, and because it's smack dab in the middle of the city, they have a curfew. No flights can take off after 11 o'clock at night or until 6 o'clock the next morning. When they started here, they were using seaplanes for rescues. And in the 1960s, they got this great idea to use jets. And so they literally had to taxi the jet across Harbor Drive here over to the airport to use their runway. A special gate was installed for them, and then you would have to reverse that when you came back. They now are using primarily helicopters, but they still have that access to the airport if they needed it. Now, San Diego Harbor is about 14 miles long from the mouth down to Imperial Beach, with 54 miles of coast, including San Diego, National City, Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, and Coronado. Now, our first stop is the Maritime Museum. They have several tall ships, they have the submarine, and a Vietnam-era swift boat, and all that you can go through for part of their museum. do, speed up, but down at the end of the pier over there, you'll see the tall ship with the black with the white stripe. That's the California, and that's the official tall ship of California. Behind it is the reproduction of the Spanish galleon San Salvador, which brought Juan Cabrillo to San Diego. It was built by volunteers here in San Diego back in the early 2000s. And then there's the Berkeley. It was built in the late 1800s. It served up the San Francisco Bay Area. It was very busy during the 1906 earthquake and subsequent fires, shuttling people out of San Francisco to Oakland. Next to that is the HMS Surprise, which they used in Master and Commander and Pirates of the Caribbean. And then there's the Star of India. It was built in 1863 on the Isle of Man. It has gone around the world 21 times. It is still seaworthy today. And they do take it out for special events, and they have special crew times for that. This is our stop for the Maritime Museum. It is a separate entrance fee for that. No discount, unfortunately, right now. This is the Maritime Museum. Okay. Our next stop will be the Embarcadero. That'll be for the Midway. The Midway has 65 displays on board. It has 34 refurbished aircraft, and it has 3 flight simulators. It has self-guided tours and guided tours. The top of the Midway is barely over there, but it's a good sized aircraft carrier. Okie dokie, this is the Embarcadero for the Midway. Come to a complete stop. Now over here to our left, before these hotels were built, even longer ago than that, actually, there was a baseball park there. It was called Lane Field. And that's the original home of the San Diego Padres. They were renamed from the Hollywood Stars to Padres. Now they recruited Ted Williams, and Ted Williams hit the longest home run out of that park. And when he hit his home run, it ended up in the back end of the freight train. It went all the way to LA. And on our right is the Midway. And in the very back here, if you look between the trees, you'll see the statue of the sailor kissing a nurse from that photo from World War II. On the right is the aircraft carrier memorial. Yeah. I keep wishing they would get rid of those. Yeah. On the right is the home killing statue. That's pretty self-explanatory. tour. This one that looks like the bow of a ship is for the USS San Diego. It earned 18 battle stars during World War II, second only to the USS Enterprise, and that's the aircraft carrier, not the starship. It also had 34 different encounters with the enemy and never lost a sailor. So that's a pretty good statistic. Now we'll be going to Seaport Village next. No, they don't. They just own that tall building that is erected already in this. Now on our right is the former police headquarters here. You know, the place where they bring the riffraff and don't like laws. Now it's just a headquarters for eating and shopping. There is a small museum in there with a jail cell. You can go take a selfie there. You missed it. I was making a pun. Most people catch it. Now, this was a working seaport at one time, and the water line came up a lot further than it is now. This is all filled in by dredging the harbor. Now, it also was a landing here for the ferry. It was an automobile ferry landing that took people over to Coronado from here. And then in 1969, that ferry went away. Yeah. And then you had to go across the bridge and pay for it. So then they brought back at least a pedestrian ferry. So you can take a ferry over that way. Now, on our left here is our seal tour. And it's a short little bus ride over to Shelter Island and you get into the harbor.
We'll be right there.
And
We'll be right there.
yeah, it is. It's a short bus ride, and then you get in the water and you get to see the seals and the dolphins that come into the harbor. Once in a while, a whale gets lost. And so, get up closer to the Navy ships. In here at Seaport Village, you got a bunch of specialty shops, like a t-shirt shop, and kite shop, a flag shop, and a hot sauce shop called Hot Licks. There's a really good Mexican food restaurant called Marian's, and she gives a good discount to trolley riders. And it is to our left, down there, around the corner. And there's not one but two Ben & Jerry's here. Now, if you haven't purchased your ticket for the SEAL tour, you might want to do that when we get up here, because they do have the tickets for sale over here. Yeah, soon. They're spending all that money. You wonder how long it's going to be there. Now we need to get back on. Please watch your step as you exit. Jolly Roger.
I'm back. I have some advice for all you travelers out there in the tour. You had better stay seated while we're in motion. Keep your body parts inside at all times. Watch out for those low-hanging branches. They're not friendly. No smoking or alcoholic beverages, or you might be terminated. We want you back.
Hitler? No. It's the Terminator. The Governor. You know. Oh, not a fan, huh? Over 700 movies and television shows have been filmed here in San Diego. Way back in the late 60s, there was a cult classic called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes that they filmed a scene over here at the police station. But the films that people know more are like Maverick, Top Gun, and Top Gun. So now, it's on, if you do stream Paramount Plus, it's on there. And across the street on our left, the building with all the solar panels on it, is the new Children's Museum. And I guess they'll be calling it New Children's Museum when it's 50 years old. It has lots of interactive activities for the kids to do. Oh, there's a vehicle in front of me. I guess I better not go. You know, they say to ring the bell, but it doesn't seem to help all the time. Yeah. Amazing. They were actually talking to each other. You know, they say the fish in here are shy, but I think that's just their nature because they're quiet. Hi, you guys are asleep back here. Love it. Well, where we started the tour was where San Diego started, Old Town now. But down here was a thriving seaport. And a gentleman by the name of Alonzo Orton came here on a steamship. And he was really impressed at how busy this seaport was. But he couldn't believe his eyes when he didn't see a city backing it up. It was the first time he had seen such a busy, active seaport, but there was nobody living nearby or working nearby. And so he asked the workers at the docks what's going on, and they said, well, everybody's up 3 miles north of here, back in San Diego. So he made his way up there and he talked to the people and asked them why they were up there, and they go, there's nothing down there but a bunch of scrub brush and jackrabbits and coyotes. And, you know, we like it better up here. And he said, well, I wouldn't even give you $5 for this town. And they said, well, if you don't like it, you can start your own town. So he thought about it, and he said, yeah, is there any land for sale? And they said, yeah. And by auction, so it took several months, but they got an auction for him. And the first piece of land that came up, he put in his bid of $100. And the townspeople started laughing at him, and he couldn't figure out why at first, but then he realized nobody else was bidding against him. So he immediately quit bidding real high. And so he ended up buying over 900 acres for a nice little tidy sum of $250. Now, he came down here and laid out a city, and you'll notice some unique things. Our city blocks are very short, and that's because every block is an acre in size. There are no alleys down here, because he said they only attract trouble and trash. And somebody asked me, well then, where do you put the trash? In the trash can. Where else? Yeah. Anyway, so, and so he also got lots of work, got a nickname called Corner Lot Horton, because he liked the more corners that he could have for light businesses, so they could advertise on 2 streets at the same time, you know. Now we're coming into the neighborhood of the Gaslamp Quarter, and you can tell the Gaslamp Quarter by the street lights. They look like old-time gas lamps, and they go from 4th Avenue to 6th Avenue, from Broadway down to L Street. I'm trying to figure out what is so good over here. They've got a line every day over here. I guess it's a pizza place. Kind of looks like pizza boxes over there. Catty corner to us, the beige building with the black, it is called the Century Building. It once housed the city administration, the police department, the library. I don't always see it. We're going to stop over here by the Horton Grand. And the Horton Grand didn't always exist there. It's made up of 2 different hotels that were on the property where they put the Horton Plaza. And the guy bought the 2 hotels for $1 each. Now, after Horton had started building his city down here, this area got to be known as the Stingaree because it had brothels and gambling establishments. And the men that came here said, you could get stung faster for your money here than you could get stung by a stingray in the ocean. Now, one of the more famous owners of a gambling establishment down here was Wyatt Earp. And he came here after Tombstone, and he was here for about 10 years. And he then left and went up to Alaska for the gold up there. He really was into mining. Now, after they outlawed brothels and gambling down here, this area just kind of fell into disrepair. Nobody would come down here. Then about 1970s, they said, hey, let's clean this up and make it a place where people want to come. And sure enough, that's what they did. And they got, well, it looks good. Just has its little problems with people. The old spaghetti factory was the first building that they rehabbed. And then, well, there's a convention in town. Looks like a large one. Across the street is the convention center, and on your right there, it looks like a sailboat with waves crashing at its side. And this part just looks like waves crashing, but people tell me it looks more like a hamster habit trail than it does waves crashing. And then somebody says, you know, it actually looks like tape dispensers, because of right here in the front, these little ropes. So, art is in the eyes of the beholder. Huh? Now on our left here, the brownish building is the home of the Padres, Petco Park. It is a pet supply chain. Might be some dancing around the church. I don't care if I ever get that. Root for the Padres. It's a shame for us one. It's just another we all Hey, this is our Petco San Diego Hilton Bayfront stop. I'm surprised that I didn't see any around the horn back there. We're great. Let's see around there. Here you go. Oh, you had a sign. The other one's coming. Get out of there in the nick of time. On the right is a community college. Caesar Chavez campus. On the right here is the Mercado, which is shopping and dining. And we've got a stop up here.
It is a little chilly, really.
Now make sure that you people in the back, nothing is loose that'll fly out the window because there's no way to retrieve it. Yeah, it goes off the bridge. Bye-bye. Might as well just leave the button. I'll be playing music as we go over the bridge. Nope. somebody doesn't know anything about it. Now, coronado means crown in Spanish, like a royal crown. So, dredging over the years. And so it was just an island over here that had scrub brush and jackrabbits. And people like to go hunting. And the two gentlemen, Elisha Babcock and Hammond Story, were two such people that liked to hunt for jackrabbits. So they would come across in the boat, the north end of the island here, and come up here and start hunting those jackrabbits. They said there was approximate population of jackrabbits, about 10,000 to 1 person to hunt. That's quite a few people to few rabbits that a person could kill. Anyways, they would come over here on a regular basis, and one day after hunting, they went walking along the beach here and said, you know, this would be a great place for a resort. And so they went about, they pulled their money together, and they bought a lot of land over here. They set aside part of it for their resort, and the rest of it they said, we're going to set aside for auction. And that way they could raise the money to build their resort. And so they put in some infrastructure of fresh water being piped over here from San Diego. They put in a train to take people from behind us, where people would come up on their boats and take them down to where they were going to have an auction, and also then later on they could use the same train for they brought the building supplies in. Now, they ran the auction for several days. At the end of the first day, they made back their initial investment, and by the end of their auction, they had sold $2.2 million worth of land over here. And that wasn't everything. They still owned a bunch of land too. So they took that money, and over $600,000 was used to build the building, and $400,000 to furnish it. They did it in 11 months from March of 1887 to February of 1888. And San Diego isn't known for its lumber supplies, so they had to get it from somewhere. So several thousand, I guess, redwood trees were cut down for it, and they were strapped together and made into a big raft-like thing. I mean, huger than a raft you could ever imagine. It was probably as big as that cruise ship that we saw down there. Anyways, they would float them down here, and then there was a sawmill over in San Diego, and that's where they had it cut up and then put on the barges and brought over here. Now, some people that have bought land during the auction didn't want to wait for all that to get here, so they went over to San Diego and looked for houses that had been abandoned, and then they would have them moved over here. I'm not sure how they did it then. I thought they just took them apart and brought them over. There was no cranes to lift them up in the 1800s there, I know of. But anyways, I'll show you a couple of those cottages that they did bring over here. Now we'll be eventually stopping at McPee's. It's an Irish pub here, and we'll go down by the ocean and look at the ocean and a couple other houses I wanted to show you. And nope. Nope, don't go by that one either. No, sorry. Now, on the left here, these three white cottages with the green trim around the windows. Those were the ones that were transplanted, some of the ones that were transplanted here. In 1890, a family in Sherman Heights in San Diego built a 3-story Victorian-style home, and it stayed there for several generations. About 1985, they found the perfect place for it over here. And they used a 300-foot crane to lift it up off of its foundation, and they moved it over here. And it is nicknamed the Baby Dell because of the way it looks. It's this one on the right. And it sold last spring for $15.5 million. Now, across the way here, that long strip of land, that peninsula out there, is Point Loma. Loma means hill in Spanish. And you've got the Pacific Ocean in front of us. You'll see some islands out here, and they're real clear today, clearer than they were this morning. Those are the Coronado Islands. They're named after some gentlemen that were martyred over in Europe. And they're a possession of Mexico. And Mexico's that part of the land down there, that's long strip down there. Now we're coming up on these little sand dunes here. If you look closely, they're in the shapes of letters. And it spells out Coronado. And you can see it on Google Earth. And that gentleman by the name of Mondo drug up seaweed and formed it into the letters and then covered it over with sand. Now, over here on the left, this big brick Tudor-style house is the Crown Manor. It's over 23,000 square feet. It's on the market for $40 million. So, like I said earlier, several movies have been done over here too, like My Blue Heaven, Canine, and Stuntman, and this one from 1959. Maybe you might recognize it from the music. Some people already figured out it was Marilyn Monroe, and the movie was Some Like It Hot. It was filmed over here at the Hotel Del Coronado, and it had Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Joey Brown in it. Yeah. He didn't care who he was dating. Anyway, and if you notice, there's a fountain over here to the right. It's in the shape of a crown. Hotel of the Crown. Hotel of Coronado. Now, we'll be stopping at McPee's, which is an Irish pub, and they do offer a discount on their food and stuff, so enjoy if you choose to stay and have some lunch. So remember, if you're getting out, that the last time that we pick up over here is at 4 o'clock. But there's plenty to see over here. Stores, restaurants. There's even a really good candy store across the street from the stop. It's called Coronado Candy Factory. And they make fresh fudge over there. Yummy. Make sure you get all your before the main seat until I come to a complete stop and open the doors. And thank you for joining me today. Thank you, folks. Yeah, did you get one? Do you have your ticket? Okay, then just show that to the driver. Thank you, folks. So another per home. Oh, this.
Hello, sweetheart. Of all the tours in all the world, you had to walk in mine. I just want to clue you in some dangerous situations. Lay low and stay in your seat. And keep your mitts and mugs inside, see? Because smoking is bad news, and so are dames and drinking, so don't mess with them. You may not believe me now,
That was
but
really rich
tomorrow,
and little.
someday, the rest of your life, you will
Yeah,
know that I'm
first
right.
lady. You recognize the music? Uh-huh. As time goes by. Now, another person that's important both to San Diego and Coronado is John Spreckles. And John Spreckles is the son of Bob Spreckles, who had started Spreckles Sugar. And he worked for his dad for a while, but ended up going into shipping. And he became quite wealthy at that. Now, he got to know Babcock's story from, his trips down here for vacation with his family. And one day they finally confessed to him that they just felt they were in over their heads and they wanted to sell the hotel. And so instead of letting just anybody buy the hotel, John Spreckles bought the Hotel Del. And he kept it pretty much the way it was from that point on. And he started buying other businesses or starting other ones here. And now, when he purchased the Hotel Del, there was a bunch of other land that came with it. A lot of it was down here on the north end of the island, and he leased out some of it to a gentleman by the name of Glenn Curtis, who was doing a flight school, teaching people how to fly seaplanes at the time. And that seemed to attract the attention of the Navy and the Army. And they started using the land without permission. First on our right, though, is Spreckles Park, and it was named in honor of John Spreckles. And to the left is the library that he donated. It's, of course, expanded over the years. And anyways, back to the story. Since the Navy and the Army started using the land, but they didn't even ask permission for it, John Spreckles went to the Army and Navy and said, "Hey, I'll sell you the land for $300 an acre." And they said, "Forget it. We'll just have it condemned under eminent domain and you won't get anything for it." And he said, "That'll never happen." And sure enough, it ended up in court, and the federal government paid out $5 million for the land plus $1 million interest to John Spreckles. And then the Army decided they didn't really want the land, so the Navy took all of it. And Glenn Curtis got hired to teach the Navy people how to fly, and that was a big thing. So then North Island Naval Station became Naval Air Station, the birthplace of naval aviation. Now, other firsts were the first aircraft carriers were brought here because of the pilots here, and also the first place where they did maritime refueling. Another one was that they had the first demonstration of parachute jumping here, and it wasn't done by anybody in the military. It was done by a barnstormer, and that barnstormer's name was Georgia Tiny Broadwick, and she was fearless, and she would jump out of the plane with the parachute. It had attached to the back cover a static line that would yank off the cover and deploy the chute. Well, she had 3 successful ones that day. And the fourth one was just a little out of character for her. She was unaware of the fact that too much static line, the line that would yank the cover off, was waiting too long, and the wind caught it and blew it up over the tail section of the plane. So she's just dangling there, so she cuts herself loose with enough slack to still deploy the parachute herself, which she did, and she got back to Earth safely. And she made sure that nobody ever helped her with the static line again. Never again. Do it myself. Now on our right is the Coronado Municipal Golf Course, and when they finished getting the basic course done, they didn't have any plants or trees, so some of the and the city founders set aside 1,440 acres for a park, slapped the name City Park on it, and then they just left it until they didn't do anything with the land until about 1910-ish, when they decided that it was time to start thinking about doing something with the land. And they realized that the Panama Canal was due to open in 1915, so they thought, well, gee, let's have a big party. So they decided to have an exposition. They built buildings to house exhibits, and they renamed the park to Balboa Park and City Park. And that was because of the explorer Balboa, who discovered the Pacific Ocean. And so on January 1st of 1915, they opened the gates to the park for people to come in. Now, at first it wasn't real popular, but as the year went along, more and more people came. Now on our right is San Diego High School, the oldest high school in San Diego. It started out being called Russ School because Mr. Russ donated the land, the wood for it to be built, and it was a 2-story, 8-classroom school way back then. And now it's called San Diego High School. It's sprawling. Anyways, now all those buildings that they built in the park, they made more permanent, and they now house museums and other items or other things like restaurants. If you notice to our left, you see the Air and Space Museum. You'll see Comic-Con, and this green wall here is the back of the Starlight Theater. And this is what happened during the show. No, they're not going to get rid of it. No, they're going to try and rehab it. Here's a group that really wants to rehab it. Not just for musical theater. Because of that. They had spotters that would signal the orchestra and the actors what was happening. So they got that down to an art. But they want to use they're going to refurbish it and get other uses for it other than just theater. So I think that's a good idea too. But all these buildings down here were built for another exposition of 1935. Since the first one was so successful, the first one ended up going 2 years, and it had over 3 million people come to it. So now you'll notice the difference in architecture. Oh my, we have another tree fall down. Yeah. But now they've got us blocked off that we can't go into the park. Yeah. Oh, she did? Okay.
Light at Balboa Park.
Yeah, they closed on Balboa Park.
After the stop.
So, sorry folks, we're going to have to skip the rest of the park. Well, I mean, to the vehicles. And they probably don't want people really going in there either. Don't want the liability of having another person get hit. One of those eucalyptus trees took out a planter with another type of tree in it. And so there was no today, so I don't understand. Yeah, the rain last night. Uncork. Unfortunately, eucalyptus trees are very tall. They have a very shallow root system. You get a lot of rain and then it gets the ground too soft. Sometimes it'll fall through because of the wind, and we had some really strong winds last week. And today, it may have been just from all the rain that we had last night. Barrio, there's no more, which is nice. So when they removed the Russ name from the school, they at least named the road Russ Boulevard after him. the names of the streets are Grape and Hawthorne and Columbia and Indian. That's because other people settled here first. The Italians didn't come until 1906 from San Francisco. 6,000 families came here after the 1906 earthquake and fires up there. And they came here because we had a thriving fishing business going on here. And the Portuguese came too. They're Point Loma. Anyways, over here on the right, these 5 houses though are all been repurposed to commercial use. But a lot of them are stayed the same as a whole. There's been a lot of new condos and apartments and office buildings and hotels over the years built here. One of the more expensive places to live in San Diego too. Now on our right is the Piazza della Famiglia. And tomorrow, if you have nothing planned, they have a modified farmer's market, basically just produce, tomorrow here. On Saturdays, they have a real big one that has all kinds of vendors besides food. Now on the right, across the street, is the Firehouse Museum. It's open on Thursdays through Sundays. So, now we're going to be heading up to our stop here. Uh-oh. We're so close. Gee, you get to walk home from the stop. You don't have to go to Old Town. So, there's lots of other food here besides Italian. There's a British pub, there's Argentinian food, there's a superfood craft place here, and we've got Mexican, we've got Argentinian, so there's all kinds. Plus, you can't forget gelato and ice cream. There are 2 different places for that, so. And here we are. Thank you. Good afternoon. You're welcome. It was my pleasure. They have to pay thousands of dollars to keep them open, which I think is crazy, but it's either that or give it up to people being able to park there. Parking is much of a premium here. Yeah. On our right is another view of the Piazza della Famiglia. Great place to get a cappuccino or a vino and sit out there and enjoy the weather and the ambiance of the environment. Anyway, coming up here on our right is Piazza Bassolone, and it is where they salute all the Italian-American service people. And the bust here is of Gunnery Sergeant John Bassolone, who gave his life on Iwo Jima to save a lot of other soldiers' lives. He was then given the Purple Heart, the Navy Cross, and the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroics. Something was given to his family, I guess. That's what's going on. Now, in 1906, when the Italians came here, they were doing a form of fishing called 3 Men and a Hook. And they would stand on the platform on the outside of the boat, and they would work together. They each have a pole, and at the top, of course, was a line attached. At the other end, there was one hook, and it had 2 other people, or 3 people altogether, attached to that hook. And they would work together to get the fish, because tuna fish weigh anywhere from 100 to 300 pounds. Plus, you had to lift it up over your head to get it into the boat. And you had to be very careful because tuna fish have very sharp fins and they can cut you. Now, they did that for a long time, but then they eventually changed to nets. And that's kind of what killed off commercial tuna fishing in the United States, those nets. Because they got over-regulated, so the 6 canneries that were here in San Diego all moved south of the border, and the fishermen will go down for part of the year and fish and then come back to their homes here. Now I'm going to show you a mural that depicts the 3 Men and a Hook style of fishing in just a moment. And right here on our right is that mural. And you can see them working really hard. It's not easy to do that. Now, it wasn't a pole like you think of nowadays. Anyways, a little music for singing too. A little audience participation. Let's sing along with Heart. sir, or madam, is not a beagle in your picture. That looks more like a Cocker Spaniel or something. concert, so they still do it even today, which is on Sundays at 2 o'clock. Anyways, now we talked about tuna fishing. And now for a word from my big boss.
Hello, my name is Chris Bryant. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Conductor of Historic Tours of America. One of the best ways for a company to find out more about the community. I would like to ask you to do a very special favor for us, as well as for us in the future. As you exit the trolley, please pick up a comment or a button when your tour members coming up right now. It takes just a minute to fill it out and tell me what you thought about your tour today. Has a place for you to put your address, who sold you the ticket, where you heard about it, and who your conductor is. Feel free to give us your comments about the tour and anything else you wish. Remember, drop it in the email. Now I'll pay the list. It's very simple, but it's very important to us. It's only when we hear from you, our guests, that we're able to improve what we're doing. Also, if you enjoyed your tour, we would appreciate it if you would please write a review on TripAdvisor or recommend us to a friend. Old Town Trolley is part of the Historic Tours of America family of tours and attractions, and the brochure your conductor is pointing to will tell you more about us and also how to enjoy our discounted tours and attractions in Boston, Massachusetts, Key West, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, St. Augustine, Florida, San Diego, California, Savannah, Georgia, and our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Be sure to pick one up on your way out. On behalf of all the cast members of Historic Tours of America, may I say thank you for being with us today.
We're back at Old Town. They're having a big celebration this year. It's a big historic year for the Boston Tea Party. So if you go to Boston, be sure to take our trolley tour and some of the other tours of the Boston Harbor. You know, my name, just to remind you, is Lynn, so if you fill out a comment card, feel free to put my name. But if you didn't like it, please put down somebody else's name, like George. I don't want you to play for it. And back here in Old Town, there's plenty of places for eating and shopping and museums. Even the cemetery over here to look at, El Campo Santo, the second oldest cemetery in San Diego. And on our right here, the Temecula Olive Oil Company. They'd love to sell you some olive oil. And some music for you to get in the spirit of things here. Now I hope you folks will come back down this way. Check out the Whaley House here on the corner, America's Most House. They have daytime tours, they have nighttime tours. They also have a paranormal tours on Wednesday nights through Saturday nights, 10:30 to 12:30 at night. And they get out the ghost hunting equipment, you know. We also have Ghost and Greystones tour, City Lights tour, and of course the Seal tour we talked about earlier. So check those other ones out too if you need something else to do. Now across the street on our right is Heritage Park. We didn't get to talk about this, but they brought down here a bunch of Victorian homes from up there in Hillcrest, Baker's Hill, and to preserve them right back there. And over here at the right is the Mormon Battalion Historic Site. And the story goes that a battalion of Mormons came here from Iowa to fight the Mexican-American War with their families in tow. And by the time they got here, the war was over. Now they'll talk to you more about that. And they even have a thing where they'll show you how to pan for gold. So, now this is the end of the tour for me. So I'm going to be asking you all to exit. If you need to continue and see the rest of the tour, please go to the trolley in front of me It leaves at 2:20, and you can see the rest of the tour with them. If you need a restroom, it's up on the 3rd floor here in this building, and there's an elevator to the left of the cashier stand. And please check out the stores around here. We've got lots of great souvenirs. Here you go, folks.